Hi SMC students, my name is Klara, and this video actually do not only apply for SMC students, but for incoming college students in or around the LA area. So I have gotten a lot of questions about housing at SMC, like does the school offers or provide housing or dorms. So in this video, I'm gonna answer all the housing questions that you're gonna need to know if you're starting college in the LA area. I'm gonna talk about how and where to find housing, how much it costs, and what you need to apply for it and more. So unfortunately, SMC does not help with housing. You're gonna have to arrange that yourself. Colleges are a little bit different than universities. They don't have dorms. And since it's not an exchange program, you're gonna be responsible to arrange your own living situation. But don't worry, I'm gonna help you and explain some options that you have. It's very expensive to live around the Los Angeles area, and your rent can vary a lot depending on which area you live in. If the apartment complex has a lot of amenities, and of course how many people live in the same apartment. So for example, Santa Monica is pretty expensive. Culver City used to be pretty inexpensive. The Valley is very famous for being like kind of the least expensive, and let's just say you don't really want to live in Hollywood. I can actually put some areas down below that's pretty like inexpensive but still pretty good, or kind of like review some of the areas if you want to. Not a lot of information, but just the basics. So for example, if you're 4 people sharing a 2-bedroom apartment, meaning that you're 2 people in each of the rooms, so your rent should be $500 to $750 each. And if you had your own room, obviously your rent would be $1,000 to $1,500 a month. So therefore, a 2-bedroom apartment would be around $2,000 to $3,000 a month. But of course, it's LA, there's more expensive places too. Since LA is so expensive, it is very common, or I think it's the most common thing for students to share a bedroom with other students. I usually say that there's 2 types of apartment buildings in LA. There's the huge complex ones that usually has a lobby, a lot of staff, they have a website, they have everything very organized. Those buildings usually have a pool, a gym, like a lounge area. They can have like a barbecue, like a grill and stuff like that. And the buildings are usually a lot more updated and new. They're a lot bigger and more like established apartment complexes, but therefore they're a lot more expensive. Then there is the smaller complexes that has a lot less units in it. They have a lot less amenities. They usually only have like a manager working there. So those places are a lot less expensive. However, they are a little bit harder to find because they usually don't have a website, and they only come up like rarely on like apartment website and like search monitors, or you actually have to find them passing by because they have small signs with the number of like the building manager or something like that. It's not really common in Europe. Actually, I've never seen that in Europe before, but that's kind of like how it works, and I guess that's why it's less expensive, because they are using a lot less expensive methods of like renting these places out. But I'm gonna try to link some of these like websites or like search monitors where you can find those like smaller and less expensive places in the description box below. International students usually stay in the fancier apartment complexes, probably because they're either used to the higher standards or for the simple fact that they want a pool when they stay in California. And also, these fancier complexes are usually better staffed, and from what I've understood, they're more equipped and also more experienced in dealing with international students' proof of income, which these smaller complexes are not. I can put some of the common apartment complexes that international students stay at when they study here in LA in the description box below, but I will encourage you to do your own research too, because depending on which college you study at, it might not be a good fit for you because of the commute, traffic, your lifestyle, or other things. And when you're looking for a place, consider being located to a good bus route if you're not planning to buy a car. LA traffic is something else, and a route that would take like 30 minutes in Sweden would take like 2 hours in LA. It's insane. Of course, depending on which time you go into traffic, but I would stay away from traffic from 12 to 3 at least. Actually, maybe even 11 to 5. I think that's more accurate. So what's your options? You can either rent from a company/apartment complex or from a private person who might own a house or an apartment that they rent out a room in or that they're subleasing. There's also a few different ways you can go about doing this or how to rent it. Taking over somebody's spot on a lease. This is, in my opinion, the easiest thing to do. You're basically taking over somebody's spot in an apartment and their spot on the lease. So this eliminates the process of actually finding a place and also the process of all the roommates being approved. So in my opinion, this is the less risky option. And also, it's very easy to find roommates that has to like replace somebody else on like Facebook and stuff like that, because it's LA and people move around a lot or move home to their country, whatever state they're from. So this is a very safe option because there's a lot of people moving out and moving to different places, so there's always like spots that has to be filled. You can also go through the process of trying to find roommates and then going apartment hunting together. So this obviously gives you a lot more freedom to find people that you really click with and also the perfect apartment complex or house. But there is so much going into an apartment or house hunt and getting your lease approved. And most international students or out-of-state students might not have that time to actually go and look for a place. So it's not something that I would really recommend. I have actually done this. I found some girls on Facebook that I really clicked with that was looking for roommates, but they didn't really have a specific place in mind. But we all had places that we could stay for a long time before we needed to find a place. So if you don't have time, again, don't do it. So if you have the time and energy, this could work out better because you can kind of like handpick who you want to live with and where you want to live. But there is so many factors that can go wrong in this like process. So I would still try to stay away from it. And obviously you can rent a place by yourself and buy a place, but that is very expensive. But if you do have the money, go for it. I mean, that's kind of like the simplest thing I would guess, to like not having to deal with like roommates and other people signing contracts. But if you or your parents has the means to, go for it. So how do you go about finding and renting these places, and where do you look for them? I would recommend to find a room or roommate on Facebook. There's a lot of people on the SMC Facebook groups that are looking for new roommates or that has a room for rent. There are also roommate websites that you have to pay for to use, and also Craigslist, but I wouldn't really recommend that. In my opinion, Facebook really does work best, and there is some sense of security since it's Facebook and you can kind of like do a little bit of a background check on the person that you're talking to. There is so many Facebook groups for roommates and apartments. There's specific ones for LA, like for your specific college, for Swedish people. So there's not going to be any problem for you to finding a place. So there's definitely a lot of options for you. And I can link some of these Facebook groups in the description box down below. There's also a room rental list at the International Students Office at SMC, where you can find people that are renting out rooms in their houses. And they have gotten in contact with the college to get on the list. However, in my opinion, these rooms are pretty overpriced for what you get. So from what I've seen, these houses are usually pretty old. They're not that up to date, and they can be pretty like messy or like weirdly like decorated. And they don't have a lot of amenities such as a pool, like a lounge area, maybe like a grill or like barbecue, which most of the apartment complexes have. Also, the landlords are a little bit different in my opinion, but it is a backup option. So what do you need in order to rent a place, and what do you need to submit? As an international student, you need 2 times the monthly rent as a deposit, but this can be divided. If you're 4 roommates, this can be divided on 4, so it's gonna be less money if you're basically more people. Then you need a bank statement, and this can be a proof of student loans, this can be a proof of financial support from your parents, or like a bank statement of like how much funds you actually have like in a bank account. You also need your F1 visa and also your I-94, which is like the proof of when you enter the country. And lastly, you need your passport, and the apartment complex might make copies of these documents. And if you have a green card or is an out-of-state student, you might have to show a proof of income, which has to be 3 times the monthly rent. However, I do think a lot of apartment complexes are a little bit lenient towards students when it comes to that, because I know a lot of students that has come from like out of state and stuff like that didn't really have an income, and that was approved anyways. They also need your social security number and also government ID, such as a driver license or a passport. When looking for places, you can either start before you arrive in America or when you get here. But places goes fast here, so you might lose a place if you can't be here and sign the lease right away. I kind of thought I could reserve a place 3 months in advance, but that's not really how it works in the US. There's no wait list for apartments that we have in Sweden. Apartments and ads looking for roommates are posted when they need you to move in as soon as possible, or in a month or so. So if I were you, I would start looking before you move here, like in which area you want to live in that has a good commute to your school. Then start looking seriously for a place 2 weeks before you come here. But make sure you have an Airbnb, hotel, or hostel booked for about like 2 to 4 weeks when you arrive here, so you have like kind of a secure place to stay for a little while. Some people are lucky finding and signing papers for a place the first week when they're here, but there's a lot of competitions for the good places and roommates, so it's definitely not not guarantee that you're gonna find something that fast. It will probably take you longer. So I would recommend you to solely focusing on finding a place the first few weeks that you are here. Also, a really important thing, do not pay a safety deposit before you get here, especially not to a private person or like one of your future roommates. If somebody asked you to do that, it could very well be a scam. It's also a really good idea to actually see the place first before you sign a lease or anything like that. It might not look as the pictures that you have seen, and also it's a good idea to check out the roommates first if they're clean or not. A lot of people here in LA are pretty messy or like irresponsible, so it's a pretty good idea to at least actually see the place in person to see if your roommates are the way they seem. When you have all of these documents, you have to fill out an application, and there is an application fee, which is usually about like $20-25, and it usually doesn't take that long to get approved. It usually takes a few days to like a week. You also might need a check to submit your safety deposit to the apartment complex. So it is a good idea to arrive in America a little bit early to fix a bank account. And I would recommend Chase. In my opinion, they're very fast and everything goes very smoothly through them. I have had Chase for the 8 years that I lived in America, and I have had no complaints about them. They're really simple. Everything works so smoothly. And compared to other banks that my friends have had or like tried, Chase is very unproblematic. Everything works very simply, while other banks have taken like days to make like money available for you, even if you like put them in cash, and then it took like days to actually make them available. Getting things done with those banks were a lot more problematic. And as long as you have all the documents that you need to apply for an apartment, you can get an American bank account. So when your application is approved, you will pay your safety deposit. This can either be to the apartment complex, or you can also pay the safety deposit to the person that you're taking over the lease from. But I would kind of make sure that you're on the lease before you pay them, so you know that they can't really take that back and like actually scheme you for the money. And have everything in writing, like on Facebook, Messenger, like email, so nobody can go back on a promise, and that you have legally proof that this was like an agreement and this is what you agreed to. A lot of international students, I think especially us Swedish people, end up living with people from our own country. Even if this is a good way of finding comfort in a new country, and usually leads to less collision of lifestyles between roommates, this often results in international students getting way too comfortable only socializing with people and groups from their own countries. And that defeats the whole purpose of studying in another country. So if you do decide to live with people from your own country, make sure to socialize with Americans in and outside of school, and really get to know Americans and their culture. You will learn a lot about the culture, and you will really practice your English. I went to high school, college, and university in America, and I mostly hung out and lived with Americans, and it really helped improve my English. I say take advantage of that opportunity. On the con side, both my international friends and I have noticed that it can be pretty problematic living with Americans. I think it can be a combination of differences in lifestyles, and also the fact that people in LA have very strong personalities. So I hope this video was helpful. If you have any additional questions, please ask them in the comments below, and I will link any additional information in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck finding a place, and I'll hope to see you in my next video. Bye.